My name's Aaron Massey from MrFixItDIY.com, and over the last 8 or 9 months, I've been in the midst of a pretty huge backyard remodel, trying to overhaul my hillside property and regain some functional space, as well as add some visual appeal. I finally had a chance to get some footage put together for the project, and over the coming weeks, I'll show you what's been involved in the process thus far. So we moved into this house about 4.5 years ago. And initially when we moved in, the backyard was just kind of a sloping hill that went all the way down. There was some original retaining walls in there that had collapsed and were buried. So I knew from the beginning that I wanted to restore those at some point. One of the first projects that I tackled when we moved into the house was to dig out a lot of that hillside so that I could build a temporary stable for my wife's horses. And it lasted okay for several years, but there was a lot of problems with drainage and I had to spend a lot of time updating it over the years. And it wasn't pretty from a visual standpoint and it wasn't up to par to keep the horses. So I tore everything down recently and then I've redesigned everything from scratch. So let me show you the new design. The new design involved building some massive retaining walls to kind of restore the original terraced look that the house had at one point. And since we have a kid now, I wanted to create a little bit of a backyard area where my son can play in the grass and be fenced off so that I know that he's not gonna get hurt and fall down the hill. Now, I don't have any formal design training, either in landscape design or any kind of design for that matter. Building this model in SketchUp, I took a lot of measurements and just kind of worked my way around to get a look that I really wanted, that I think fits the neighborhood and gives us what we're looking for. So this is what I've come up with as kind of the overall design. The bottom area will stay a horse area, but I'm gonna be building the barn much later, so that's kind of off the docket for now. So then I'm gonna break this project down into phases from here. Phase 1 will be building these 2 retaining walls and the upper yard area. So this project is much too big for me to tackle on my own. I just don't have the ability or the time to do it, nor do I have the experience building this size of retaining wall. So I'm bringing in my buddy Joe to help me knock it out. So the first step is digging out and pouring the lower footing for the wall, which will be about 2 feet deep. Inside the footing, we'll be installing these bent pieces of rebar to give strength to the footing and will allow the block to be tied into the footing with the rebar. The rebar will be held in place with some other pieces of rebar temporarily as the footing is poured. Joe and his guys mixed up the concrete for the footing with his mixer and poured it in place with the bobcat. Next, the first course of block was installed over the rebar and left to cure overnight. The spaces between the bottom course of block aren't filled in so that they can act as weep holes to allow any built-up water to weep through if necessary. From there, Joe and his guys can begin stacking the block. This lower wall is about 70 feet long, so it's quite an undertaking. With each course, they add rebar across the top for structural strength and then fill in the hollow cores of the block with mortar, which is called grouting. The rebar and solid filling of the blocks gives it a tremendous amount of structural strength to be able to act as a retaining wall. This lower wall will step down to follow a little bit more of the natural terrain, which helps save me a little bit of money and will still be plenty high enough to act as the wall of the stable area. Once the lower wall is built and allowed to set up for a couple weeks, the back of the wall is waterproofed and a drain pipe and gravel is added to the bottom before it can be backfilled in. From there, work begins on the upper wall. It starts much the same way as the process for the lower wall, digging out a footing all along the length of the wall. The difference between this wall and the lower wall is that this wall will run parallel to the existing patio about 12 feet away and jog inward where the current patio steps down. The finished height of this wall will be about 3 inches lower than the existing patio elevation to allow water to shed away at a 1/4 inch drop per foot. To pour the footing and grout the upper wall, we had to bring in a concrete pump truck and park it in the driveway and run a huge length of hose because there wasn't a good way to get the mixer or bobcat in a position to do it. The pump truck allowed the footing and the grouting to be put in place very quickly. It was pretty cool to see. And lastly, once the walls were built, Joe could get to work building the brick columns. I asked him to install some PVC conduit inside each column as he went so that I can install post lamps on each column down the road. So that's where I'm gonna hold off on this video. Make sure you guys stick around for more upcoming videos where I'll show you how I installed the lighting on the brick columns how I installed the fencing, as well as installed the sod and the reclaimed brick walkway. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I hope it gives you a little bit of a taste of what it's like to tackle a big project like this. It may take months or even years for me to get the backyard area completely how I envision it, but getting it started is half the battle. If this is your first time visiting the channel, welcome, and please consider hitting that subscribe button, and also hit that notification bell so you never miss out on any of the new content I put out. And as always, I encourage you to leave me a comment down below, letting me know what you guys think of this project and what types of projects you'd like to see me tackle next. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'll see you next time.